Is it even worth learning a language anymore? It's a question I hear surprisingly often. I mean, real-time translation in our earbuds and AI that can clone voices instantly. I get why people are asking it. It feels like technology is about to make this whole learning thing obsolete. But I've been talking about this in previous videos. I don't see an end to learning languages. I've been looking at some of the latest industry reports from major players like Pearson and Preply and combined them with what I'm seeing every day as the founder of the language learning platform Langia. The future looks different than what most people expect. It's less about people stopping learning languages and more about a massive shift in how they learn. The era of one-size-fits-all textbooks is dying, and it's being replaced by something much more interesting. At the same time, AI alone is not the solution. So today in this video, I want to share my vision for 2026. I'm going to break down the 5 biggest trends that are already developing, from the death of generic lessons to micro-sessions and the rise of anxiety-free learning. And of course, I will show you how you can use these shifts to learn faster right now. Let's start with the most obvious one: AI. There was and still is a lot of hype around AI replacing teachers and making language learning effortless or even completely unnecessary. But what I'm seeing is a little different. AI is not replacing learning. It's a tool that removes the friction to learn. And this is baked into Langia as well. From the content generation and simplification and one-click multimedia flashcards to a journal that autocorrects. Tools like Langia use many different AI models in many different places. Not to replace learning, but to make it more effective, efficient, and fun. So the most successful learners are not trying to make AI do the work for them. Instead, they're using AI to learn better. In the past, if you didn't understand a sentence in a book, you had to stop, look up a bunch of words, maybe check a grammar reference, and by then you'd completely lost the flow. It was frustrating and definitely a reason why a lot of people gave up on reading in their target language. Now you can just highlight a sentence and get a grammar explanation. If that's not sufficient, you ask ChatGPT or Langia's tutor, why is this subjunctive? So no, AI is not learning for you. It's basically just handling the annoying parts. The searching, the explaining, the correcting, so you can spend more time on actual input and output. And then there's content. It has always been difficult to find content that matches your level, especially if you are not studying one of the major big languages. It's either children's books or native content with very little in between. AI can now simplify or generate content that matches where you actually are. That means you can stay in that sweet spot where you understand most of what you're reading while at the same time finding it interesting enough so that motivation becomes a non-factor. This is where real acquisition happens. I've quoted this before, but it just fits so well that I'm gonna do it again, and it probably won't be the last time. Compelling input appears to eliminate the need for motivation, a conscious desire to improve. When you get compelling input, you acquire whether you are interested in improving or not. So my prediction for 2026 is this: the learners that do well won't be the ones that avoid AI, and they won't be the ones that use AI to translate everything. They'll be the ones who figure out how to use AI as a tool to create their own learning environment, removing friction without removing the actual learning. In my opinion, all language learning advice boils down to do whatever you want as long as you keep doing it. And so the friction that AI can reduce here can be extremely powerful. Another thing I'm seeing is how AI changes the way we deal with mistakes. In a traditional class, you make a mistake, maybe get corrected once in front of everyone, feel a bit embarrassed, and move on. With AI, you can practice a conversation, make 100 mistakes, get corrections, and try again. So no judgment and no embarrassment. You're basically building competence in private, so you have confidence when it matters later. This brings me directly to the second trend. Speaking of making mistakes, this might be the most important trend I'm seeing. And it's not really about technology, it's more about psychology. Anxiety-free learning matters, because low anxiety is correlated with more success in language acquisition. There's this other quote from Krashen that stuck with me. When asked what aspects of foreign language classes are the most anxiety-provoking, students put talking at the top of the list. And it makes total sense, right? I mean, I can 100% relate to that. My girlfriend is Peruvian, and so the first time I got to meet her family, which is already a stressful situation, I was only learning Spanish for about a couple of months. Her family only speaks Spanish. So you combine that already stressful event with speaking in a foreign language that you don't really speak. Geez. 2 years later, I now feel much more confident and relaxed when I see them. It was definitely a big motivator for me. But back to my point. Most of us have been in similar situations. You're in a class, the teacher asks you a question, everyone's looking at you, and suddenly every French word you'd ever learned disappears. Your mind goes blank. You stumble through something embarrassing and spend the rest of the class hoping you don't get called on again. This isn't just uncomfortable, it actually damages your learning. Research shows that language anxiety is both a cause and a result of poor language skills. So you're anxious because you're not good enough, and you're not improving because you're anxious. It's a vicious cycle. Consideration of language learners' anxiety reactions by a language teacher is deemed highly important in order to assist them to achieve the intended performance goals in the target language. Language anxiety may also be a result as well as a cause of insufficient command of the target language. For decades, we kind of just accepted this to be part of the process. You have to push through the discomfort. Just speak, even if it's bad. And sure, there is some truth to that eventually. But forcing people into high anxiety situations before they're ready is why so many learners quit. And so in 2026 and beyond, I see a total shift to this kind of mindset. There is a growing focus on what I'd call low-stakes output, ways to practice producing the language without the social pressure. Journaling is a perfect example here. When you write, you have time to think. You can pause, look something up, rephrase. Nobody's staring at you waiting for an answer. And with AI correction, you get feedback without judgment. You see your mistakes, you learn from them, and you move on. No embarrassment. Another approach is talking to an AI. I know it sounds kind of weird just having this conversation with a chatbot or the call with a chatbot, but think about what it actually offers. You can practice ordering food in Spanish, mess up completely, and try again. Mess up differently, and keep going until it feels natural. All without a real human witnessing your struggle. This doesn't mean you should never talk with people. Of course, this is obviously the end goal. But there's something powerful about building a foundation of confidence before you put yourself in high-pressure situations. You're not avoiding the hard part, you're preparing for it. The old model was study grammar, memorize vocabulary, then get thrown into conversation and hope for the best. The 2026 model looks more like get massive input, practice output in safe environments, then engage with real humans when you actually have something to say. So yeah, I think we are finally realizing that the mental state and motivation are just as important as the method itself. If your learning process makes you feel stressed and stupid, you're not going to stick with it. And consistency beats everything else in language learning. So anything that makes the process less anxiety-inducing isn't soft or avoiding the hard work. It's just a strategic choice. Number 3 is radical personalization. Instead of learning the language, it becomes learning through the language. This trend is something that I feel very strongly about. So strong, in fact, that it made me build my own language learning app in 2024. The era of generic language courses is coming to an end. You know what I'm talking about. Unit 1 at the airport. Unit 2 checking into a hotel. Unit 3 asking for directions. Unless you're literally a travel agent, this stuff is incredibly boring. I'm learning Spanish and Japanese right now, and I don't read the classic graded readers with boring plots and artificial conversations about what Jose did on the weekend anymore. I generate my own stories about things that I'm interested in, read articles and books that I want to read, but at a simplified level. In Spanish, I'm now also at a point where I just listen to podcasts like Era Digital and Startupable, shows about entrepreneurship, startups, and tech trends, and read the Mistborn trilogy unsimplified. These are topics and worlds that I'm genuinely interested in. So I'm not just learning Spanish words, I'm learning about business and technology through Spanish. The language becomes the vehicle, not the destination. And because I care about the content, I don't have to force myself to study. I just consume it like I would in my native German or in English. This is what real compelling input looks like. Content that's so interesting that you completely forget that you are learning a language. You just try to understand the ideas. And this is becoming much more accessible, first through the internet, and now even more with AI. In the past, you were stuck with whatever textbooks were available. Now, with AI tools and the internet, you can find and create content about literally anything at your level. Want to learn French through cooking videos? You can do that. Want to learn German by reading about philosophy? Go for it. Want to learn Portuguese through Brazilian football podcasts? Yeah, why not? The one-size-fits-all curriculum made sense when content was scarce and hard to produce. But we don't live in that world anymore. In 2026, the learners who progress fastest will be the ones who build their own personalized curriculum around their interests. This also solves the motivation problem in a completely different way that gamification could never. You know, these streak mechanics that try to make boring content feel rewarding through external incentives? It's something that has never worked for me. I really don't understand how people can get addicted to keeping their streak on Duolingo alive, when the content itself, the study itself on Duolingo, is like the most boring, repetitive, and slow learning experience I can possibly imagine. But when the content itself is interesting, you don't need these tricks. You have intrinsic motivation. You're not learning Portuguese to maintain a streak, you're learning Portuguese because you want to understand that podcast episode. Number 4, the attention span shift or bite-sized learning. Now let's talk about something that affects all of us. I won't pretend I'm immune to this. Our attention spans are getting shorter. I catch myself reaching for my phone constantly. I struggle to watch a full movie without checking something. And the idea of sitting down for a 90-minute grammar lecture after a full day of work is just not realistic for me anymore. And I don't think I'm alone with this. If you can do it, kudos to you. The traditional language class was built for a different era. You'd go to a classroom twice a week, sit through an hour or two of instruction, do some homework, and repeat. That model worked when we had fewer distractions and more structured time. But in 2026, I don't think that's how most adults learn anymore. Instead, we are learning in the gaps, on the commute, during lunch, while waiting for something, in bed before sleep. And here's the thing, this is not necessarily bad. The research on language acquisition suggests that frequency matters more than duration. It's better to have contact with the language every single day for 30 minutes than to do one massive 5-hour session on a Sunday. Your brain stays connected to the language. Words stay fresh, patterns keep reinforcing. But if you do one long session and then nothing for 6 days, you spend half the next session just remembering what you'd learned before. This is why I am a big believer in these kind of micro habits. Small, almost trivially easy commitments that you can stick to. Read one page, listen to one podcast episode while doing something else. For me, it's usually running or cooking or cleaning or something. Or write 5 sentences in your journal. These things compound over time. This also changes what kind of content works best. Long-form textbook chapters? Probably not ideal. But a short article you can finish in 5 minutes, a 10-minute podcast episode, a quick AI conversation practice, these fit into real life. So you can structure your own learning this way now. Instead of scheduling Spanish study time as this big block you have to protect, you can just have Spanish content ready to go whenever you have a moment of time and make this the habit you protect. Instead of scrolling through reels, you have that podcast episode downloaded, a short story or book for waiting rooms, flashcards for those random 5-minute gaps. It adds up faster than you think. The key mindset shift is this: stop optimizing for the perfect study session and start optimizing for consistency. An imperfect routine you follow beats a perfect routine that only exists in your calendar. The last trend might seem a little counterintuitive given everything we've talked about before in this video. AI tools, apps, bite-sized digital content. It sounds like the future is all screens and algorithms. But actually, I think the opposite will happen at the same time. As digital tools become cheaper and more accessible, human connection is becoming more valuable, not less. If everyone has access to AI tutors, flashcard apps, and infinite content, what becomes rare? Real human interaction. A conversation with someone who actually cares what you have to say. A teacher who notices when you're struggling and adjusts. A community that makes you feel like you belong. People are craving human connection in their learning. Not because digital tools don't work, but because we are social creatures. We want to feel seen. We want relationships, not just information. This changes how we should think about the role of technology. If you spend your italki session asking your tutor to explain grammar rules or correct basic mistakes, that's not a great use of either person's time. AI can do that. But if you come to that session prepared with a foundation of vocabulary and comprehension from your input, you can have a real conversation, share ideas, learn about their life, build a relationship. That's what language is ultimately for, right? Not to pass tests or maintain streaks, but to connect with other humans. So my advice for 2026 is this. Use all the digital tools available to you. They are incredible and they'll accelerate your learning. But don't forget why you're doing this in the first place. At some point, close the app, put down the phone, and go talk to someone. So these are the 5 trends I see shaping language learning in 2026. None of these are revolutionary on their own, but together they paint a picture of language learning that's more personal, more sustainable, and more enjoyable than what most of us experienced in school. The tools are better than ever. The content is infinite. The friction is lower than it's ever been. The only question left is, what language are you going to learn? Thank you for watching, and I see you next time.